today we're joined by the award-winning actor who starred alongside the likes of Sarah Jessica Parker and Uma Thurman. She's a Screen International Star of Tomorrow, a playwright, an author, a woman boss, coffee lover, feminist, mental health ambassador, fellow Londoner and cat breeder. And all this at the dizzying heights of age 26. So welcome, Rosie Day. Thanks so much for joining us today.
That's very nice for you to say all that.
How much coffee exactly are you drinking to get all of that done right now?
A lot. I'm one of those people that can do I've got up to 2 a day, but it really affects me. Like I have 1 coffee and then I'm buzzing for a good few hours. So
me too, and yeah. I've had loads. So I wanted to touch base at the beginning. So because I just find it so fascinating. You started acting at age 4 with no formal training. Is that right?
Yeah, which is ridiculous because I've now got friends who have got 4-year-olds and I look at them and I'm like, you're so tiny. So teeny tiny, and I don't really have any recollection of starting, to be honest, because I was 4 and I didn't want to. I had no interest in it. My sister was one of those all singing, all dancing, quite annoying children, and she got a job in a BBC series and they needed a little sister for her, and so I just got brought along and quickly figured out that I got to miss school, which was like, see, this is why I want to do it, and just so total accident.
And I had this wonderful image in my mind because I've got sisters too, of your sister being there trying desperately to get this job and you being in the background. Some amazing
I think I was just sat. She had like maybe her final recall or something, and I was just sat in the waiting room because I'd come along and the casting director saw me and they were casting the sibling at the same time, and this casting director was like, there's a real sibling, and they asked me and I said no. Acting's stupid. I don't want to do acting. I don't think I knew what it was. But then just sort of got brought along because I guess my mum couldn't leave her 4-year-old at home. So ended up doing it.
One of those amazing life moments. And then you learnt on the job, which is amazing to me. But I guess we are human apes, aren't we? We learn by mimicking. That's the best way that we learn.
Yeah. So never really, still to this day, had an acting lesson. Just literally learned by copying the actors that I worked with, really, which is a really fun way. It's a really cool way to learn. So I guess you don't really realise that you're sort of learning or just sort of absorbing what's around you.
Yeah, sure. So I want to talk to you mostly about this new book that you've got out, but I kind of wanted to randomly ask you about your lockdown experience because I'm sort of fascinated. The book was born during lockdown as a response.
Oh, you have it?
I do have it, and I've read all of it.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and it arrived on Tuesday, so it's been.
So great.
No, I've really enjoyed it, but I'm just sort of fascinated about UK experience of lockdown, and some of us were sort of climbing the walls reading Peppa Pig to little ones, and other people seem to have this creative flourishing. So and I heard a funny story about how you acquired a cat who then kind of had other cats. So tell me, how was your lockdown experience?
I loved lockdown. It was me and my partner at the times. We just stayed, we were just under a duvet with a cat and 4 newly born kittens. And that was, really cool when you work in an industry where you're away quite a lot. So I always say I've always paid rent for like a flat that I wouldn't be in that much. So it was actually quite nice to be in get my money's worth out of our flats. And we had our cat that I was given by somebody at the end of a job, this little 6-month-old cat we took in, and sort of as they closed the door they were like, by the way, she might be pregnant, and she was. And so we had 4 kittens, and there is nothing better than 4 kittens ever. Like I it's the most fun ever, and just to be in with them all the time. The problem came was that nobody could come round and see them because we were in lockdown. So then we kept all 4 kittens, and now I have 5 cats. So
she was a teenage cat mum by the sounds of things.
She was the youngest you could be to have kittens. And now I'm a single cat lady at 26, which is a bit too soon, I think, to be honest. Trying to reframe that.
But the book was born in lockdown, during lockdown. And let me plug it, and then we'll you can tell me. So it's a book. It's the instructions for a Teenage Armageddon. It's just recently out. 30 contributors from a massive range of themes, from consent to everyday racism, finding your voice, bringing kindness to your 6-year-old self. And with contributions from people like Sarah Pascoe, Naomi and Natalie Evans, Gemma Stiles. So it's kind of split into a bunch of sections, and in each section there's contributions from inspirational and iconic women and different voices, trans voices, voices of colour, activists, and then it also has a profile on a sort of kick-ass woman in every section, and top tips that you've written in it for sort of instructing your teenage life and making it easier, really. So, well, what a thing to be born during during a period of being stuck out. And it was in response to a play that you wrote.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about how it came about.
So we did a preview run of this play that I wrote that is going on again next year, actually. We got it in just the preview run just before lockdown. That was born because I've spent a long time playing teenage girls, and they're often quite badly written, and written by old men. Sorry, old men who've never been teenagers. So especially in theatre, like, you don't often see plays where teenage girls are the leads. And I wanted I was doing a play with a director who dared me to go and write a one girl play, essentially, and I did, as a joke. As a joke. Never thought anyone was going to see it, and then this play evolved, which we did, and I guess word of mouth suddenly introduced me to my now literary agents, who said to me, have you thought about turning this into a book? So, like a movement to empower teenage girls. And I was like, lol, my English teacher would be like dying if she knew that I had the opportunity to make a book. But that's what we did in lockdown, and we pitched it and got some lovely offers in from lots of different publishers, and then we spent the whole I spent the whole of lockdown putting it together, and this year actually as well. Like, it's a year and a half it took to kind of bring it all together. So it was a really big learning curve, and I know nothing about the publishing industry, so it was so fascinating to be in another world, and especially children's publishing, which is like the loveliest place to live. And I partly want to go and work in children's publishing now because everybody is so nice.
Wow. And I mean, the act of the process of putting it together. So it looks like there's a lot of people that are your peers and friends in here. And it was wonderful for me because that's something I can learn about. And I really felt like I had to Google each of their faces when I was reading, because there's this kind of bearing of souls.
Yeah.
See what this woman looks like. But there's all sorts of people in here. Like, by chapter 2, I was noticing some of the people were almost my age, and some of the contributors, because it's inviting wisdom that you would have wanted and wouldn't have asked for as a teenager. And actually, there's so much in our society that's putting the onus on outputs and exams and things. We're trying to create a rounded individual. So did you have access to all these people? Were you able to advise who you wanted in there?
So when we pitched the book, there's about, I'd say 9 or 10 women in the book that I know personally, that I've gone to before and gone, I have this idea. Is this stupid? Like, would you be involved? And luckily they all said, oh my God, yes, no, we would be involved. So we pitched it with my 10 friends sort of thing. And then once the publisher came on board, me and my editor essentially just brainstormed, because we wanted the book to be as inclusive and diverse as possible and have as many different voices as we could, because we wanted it to reflect it for every teenage girl. So yeah, and then it really was a case of I, having never sent a professional email in my life, had to reach out to, lots of people and be like agents really, and be like, hello, would you pass this on to your client? I would like them to write for this book. And lots of agents were amazing and lovely, and then lots of agents were not so nice. So that was a steep learning curve in like business.
I was going to ask that actually, whether there was anyone you really wanted and you were surprised that they weren't.
It wasn't. I think what we found was, once you got to the actual contributor, to the person, they were amazing. It was just like the gatekeeping, which was really interesting, I think, as a woman, to kind of witness that, because I have an agent as an actor but have never had to speak to agents in terms of wanting to, so that's probably the most difficult bit of the book, was like getting through, be like, please take me seriously. This book is real, and we really want to have your client in it. So yeah, and so it was really just sort of like a kind of brainstorm of all the different people we could sort of think of that might be up for it. And I would say probably about 80% of the people that we reached out to, we got.
Wow, it's kind of a dream thing, isn't it, to curate inspiration like that?
Yeah.
Are there any contributor who would be your dream contributor that you haven't been able to reach out to yet? And you can't say Taylor Swift or
not fair. That is
Caitlin Moran, who I know you're inspired by.
Taylor Swift and Caitlin Moran forever will be my saviors of my life. Who would be my? It's difficult. Like, I'm trying to think who we did reach out, because we did reach out to lots of people. We didn't reach out to Taylor Swift because we couldn't find an email for her. So that was hard. For me, it's always people in I guess in my industry, so it's people like Greta Gerwig is like my idol. Like, she would be the person that I'd be like, give me life advice. So that would be my person that I would love. But yeah, I don't know who. We did sort of reach out to a whole host of different people, but in terms of like profile, people we did go to like Malala, who is very busy, and so that that would have been amazing to have people like them in the book. But obviously I can't even imagine how many requests they get to be involved in things like this.
Well, and the book may evolve over time. And actually, something I wanted to ask was, could you see a need for there to be instructions for teenage boys Armageddons?
Do you know what? So many people have asked me this, and it's been published, and I'm like, yes, let's do it. I'm sold. I would need a male to spearhead it with me, but as in like, it's not my place to. I've never lived a teenage boys experience. Yeah. But it's something that I would love to do, because lots of parents have gone, even in that book, there are things that they'd want their that relate to teenage boys. It's not that aren't exclusively just for teenage girls. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, lots of people have actually messaged saying that, because teenage boys' mental health and men's mental health, as it's November, isn't it, which is Men's Mental Health Month, is I think so swept under the carpet and not talked about, and men don't talk as openly, I think, about their mental health as women do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was wondering what themes would be in a male book, but coming back to some of the themes, there's some really hard-hitting themes in this book, done in a very approachable way. Tell me about some of the things that you felt the need to have in here for teenage girls.
My two that I fought for, and I say fought for, it wasn't a fight, but did have to be like, we need to cover this. And it being children's publishing, there was some discussion about how do you do this, because if it's a book it says 13 plus on the cover, but I'm like, if you're in year 7 and above, I think you can read it. Probably shouldn't be saying that, but that's just my view. But my two were consent and boundaries. They were because whilst we were putting it together, the murder of Sarah Everard happened, and that actually happened where I just literally around the corner from where I lived. And I was like, we have to do something about staying safe as a young woman, which is terrifying that we have to put that in a book. And so we framed it around kind of creating boundaries for yourself and keeping yourself safe in that way, not wanting to be scaremongering in any way. And then consent was one that was non-negotiable for me if I was going to do a book about teenage girls, because I think it's probably one of the biggest topics that should be talked about right now. And consent, not just, that was the big thing for us, was it's not just sexual consent, it's consent, it's the word no, it's using the word no, which is something that I still struggle with. You can say no to things as a young woman and not be difficult and not be thought of as bad because you don't want to do something or you're not pleasing somebody. So we got the amazing Somasara, who's run the Everyone's Invited campaign, which is just incredible, and she's amazing. And she wrote an amazing essay on consent, and those were the two that I felt really passionate about having in there.
one of the most touching things for me actually was the someone, I forget who now, wrote that an ode to their best friend, and it was a sort of essay on female friendship.
Yeah,
that's right, Laura Donnelly. And that's what touched me. I've just finished The Maid, and the sort of the power of random female friendship and support in there. And there's a lovely bit about sort of intergenerational knowledge as well, which is something really dear to the Eden Project, how actually older people must and should learn from younger people. And this is a great manual for that. So for parents and, you know, fathers as much as mothers, to understand their teenagers a bit more. But yeah, that's just something I really noticed in that. And then I sort of wanted to ask you what you might think the defining characteristics of your generation are now. What really differentiates this generation from ones that have gone?
I think, I'm not sure about my generation, because but if I think about the teenage generation that the book's written for, like who kind of to empower, is that I think they're so much more educated and mature than I ever was as a teenager, and they're so much more willing to fight for things and use their voices and get out there and change the world, and they've proven that. And there's a lot of pressure and a lot of things that are on their shoulders because they have access to information that my generation didn't have as teenagers, really, because of our lovely phones. That you're constantly informed about everything, and I think they are the generation that might save the world. I do actually believe that, because I think they've been brought up in a different way, and then they're going to have children and they'll bring their children up in a different way to be accepting and to create a much kinder world, and a world that hopefully will still be standing by the time they have children, fingers crossed. I really do believe, I mean, my generation as well, but I do believe that they can make great change in politics, in climate change, in everything.
It's a very value driven, isn't it? You know, I wonder why, whether it's because there was only 4 terrestrial TV channels and no Netflix when I was young, but my generation was incredibly hedonistic, and this generation is very kind and very self-aware. And that is what will change the world, I think. So
absolutely.
And the book is all about celebration, really. Celebration to be yourself, celebration of who you are, to not feel that you have to go and write your own books necessarily. And I just wanted to spend a moment sort of celebrating how far we've come. I was looking at an independent article about what women couldn't do 150 years ago.
Right.
Almost anything. Be an accountant, vote.
Have a house, literally.
Marital rape, you know, we've come an awfully long way, and this is a kind of wonderful celebration of where we are now, I think. So I wanted to ask you a bit about what's coming next in the future. You mentioned that this book's going on tour because it wasn't able to go on tour because of the pandemic, as it was supposed to.
I think so. We have, so I think when the paperback comes out, which I'm not sure, I think that's in 6 months' time, she says. So this book we want to do another one, hopefully. It's doing quite well, the book, so we hope to do I'd like to do a second one, which would be for, this one is very much, I would say, for the young kind of 16 and under. I'd like to do the next stage of teenagers where we can talk more about the slightly more hedonistic subjects, potentially. And yeah, there's a couple of other book ideas that we've been floating around and that I've been approached to do. So I definitely want to do more in the literary space because I've absolutely loved it. Every bit of creating this book has been really, really cool. And then, just acting stuff that I am my other job. So
while you're learning about the literary world.
While I'm learning about the literary world, yeah.
And you've got you're starring as Cilla Black, I read, in the, it's the biopic, isn't it? Midas Man.
Yes, trying to not get exiled from Liverpool, essentially, for Cilla Black. I had a dream the other night that I had dinner with Cilla Black and she told me that I was wrong and that I shouldn't be playing her. That's where I am, mentally with it.
You're right in the middle of that now.
Literally right in the middle of it, but very cool, very honoured, very honoured.
An honorary Liverpudlian. I spent my entire teenage years trying to perfect with my friends her saying, "Number 3, you've got lovelier."
I know, right? She's the best. She is the best. She was such a trailblazer for women. Nobody really has done what she did. again, like it's like, you know, from recording contract to acting to presenting to, you know, being this household name, she literally did it all.
Well, there we go. There's a kind of track record to be inspired by.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask you, do you ever feel you're obviously quite a high achiever. Do you feel that, or is that not something that?
Yeah, I do. I have a brain that doesn't stop, that isn't quiet ever.
That comes with its own.
Yeah, so I definitely am, and I would be lying if I said I didn't. I have to work on even now that not equating my worth with work, which I think is very easy to do as an actor, that your value is in the jobs that you get and what you do. And so yeah, I do very much feel the pressure sometimes of wanting to achieve, which is funny because I'm also slightly like leave it to the last minute and then do all the work really quickly. So I'm a bit of a kind of juxtaposition there, I think.
And the pressure to be a role model. I mean, you've done it now. This book is the perfect stake for that.
I think so. I mean, I my thing is just, I've always sort of believed that I just want people to be kind to each other. That's really like my ethos of life, is treat people how you want to be treated. And I'm not so much a role model. I always had women growing up that I looked up to, but I also believe that you shouldn't put people on a pedestal. I don't think that, because at the end of the day, everybody is human. And one thing you talk about in the book that was really important to me is that it's okay to make mistakes. You have to make mistakes. That's how you learn. If you don't make mistakes, then you're not growing.
That's right. And there was something really powerful in the book about, you didn't make good choices, you were given good choices. And that, I can't remember who said it, but that really got me. I was like, goodness me, yes, this book's about being yourself and taking opportunity when it comes, but actually some people don't get the same opportunities.
Absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true.
And recognize that. We've got all sorts of stuff in the chat saying how it's been really inspirational, and some advice about the main book. So is it Roman Kemp has been suggested as a contributor for the book. Thanks everybody for your
I'm gonna send an email. Guys, watch this space.
So lovely to hear positive and encouraging words about the younger generation, and I think that's true, and so important actually that we are inspired by the younger generation, as well as hopefully having something to offer in terms of insights to it too. And the book starts with a really lovely quote, one of my favourite quotes by Maya Angelou, which is that each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. So on behalf of everyone that reads the book, I really wanted to thank you for standing up for all women. And we really look forward to the next thing, seeing you in the new Midas Man, and seeing how your adventures into the literary world unfold.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Sam, I believe we've got 3 copies of these to give away, and I'm going to make sure that we get them into the Eden shop if they're not there already. So instructions for a Teenage Armageddon. It's out now in hardback, paperback following. Thanks so much for joining us today, Rosie.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see what you do next.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Rosie. And I think you're on a panel tomorrow, aren't you, as part of the festival? Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so another chance to see Rosie again. But that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time, and everybody else for joining as well. Yeah, do pop on to the Festival of Discovery website and have a look at the other sessions, including Rosie's tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.